Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting back to order. We have an appointment for Sid Holt, a representative of a community group from Gleason. If you just want to come to the podium here, and maybe Mike will help push the button until the microphone's on. And if you can just introduce yourself. And just a note that our meetings are recorded and may be posted online. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Hi. Bear in mind, please, that I'm more than a little bit half deaf these days, so I won't always hear what is said if you have a soft voice. Now, the last time I think that I spoke to a number of you was at a meeting held in Gleason about the condition or state of the school and what could possibly be done. Now, I've been meeting with an awful lot of people in the town, or pardon me, the hamlet as it is, about what is necessary for the well-being of the community. I think, as Robert would tell you, our property values have shown remarkably bad slide downwards a number of years. And I think we have to get right to it. What's the problem? The biggest problem we have is our downtown. Now, I'm not saying that in relation to the native people. In fact, I spent an awful lot of time with the guys from downtown, the street people, trying to find ways to help them through a day, do things with them. And our church has a potential program to put a place in there to help deal with that group. But nevertheless, a lot of people, particularly the women, are very, very uncomfortable going downtown to the store or to anything else. The next thing is that most of the downtown is not going to be fixed. We've had lots of studies done that will show us nice looking sort of Victorian, Edwardian style storefronts and one thing and another. But that main block of brick buildings, the basement is flooded. The one end, the ceiling has totally collapsed. In short, other than the hotel, the store, and the library, there's nothing downtown to really be salvaged. It's gone. So what I'm going to suggest here, and this is in terms of long term, it's bigger than a school, sense of economic development in which the basic core of the community becomes or moves to a different place. Moves up to the north, if you will. And that's why I'm looking at this building as a potential source of something. I've gone around and I've done a basic survey, around 40 people, of what the needs people see in the community. I'd like to see a cafe, tea house type of thing. And I want to make it very clear that anything that goes in, I would hope that, in fact, I hope our zoning people will find some way to restrict the sale of alcohol to the downtown, to that actual business. I don't think we need to have anything else come in or any other activities other than right downtown that sell or serve alcohol. Make that very clear. I'd like to see a small convenience store, a hairdresser, art space. Two of the people did suggest, one said they wanted a liquor store up there, one said they wanted a laundromat. I don't think either of those are sort of feasible. Now, what I'm suggesting is, and I know that people have said that the minister will not agree to a partial demolition. I'm not sure about that. I've been talking to people up in his office as well. Whether the school board says so, I don't know. But my suggestion would be that, and I'll back it up here, that northern end of the school be maintained. Probably the utility costs would be the same as the Clooney Hall, which Jay Anderson tells me is $9,000 a year. Now, given that, and if we can make this self-supporting by putting in a small cafe, various other little types of services that a town needs, it could conceivably be and probably be self-supporting. There are other types of things that could be put in. Somebody has talked to me about a security company putting a base in there. Other things would involve document storage. Now, that is all providing a basis for some sort of economic development. I've spoken to you previously about the idea of having developing a museum, and I've been talking to people about that. And we have people who are interested from the city, from a different museum, and doing that and developing an interpretive center there. The next aspect I would look at is adult education. A room where people could come to work on their GED. As you know, we're set up with a SuperNet there. And you could work on anything from Athabasca University through to a basic GED. Also, given that we've got a shop there, I've talked to people from Lethbridge, Medicine Hat College, about offering short courses in things, everything from welding to basic mechanics, one thing or another. Also, you guys know how places like Old Sun are funded, and you'll see lots of different small colleges, so-called colleges in the city. And basically what they do, they fund themselves on the basis of people who are currently either on welfare or employment insurance or whatever. And they get so much in terms of tuition for offering these courses to people. They're all over the place in the city now. Plus, the people who come and take the course, then if it's applied towards an actual career, will get a top-up on their whatever their funding is. So there's a great opportunity to provide those kind of services for a lot of people through different ways if we attach to something else, given again the internet capabilities and so on. So in that aspect, I think we'd be offering something very much wider to the whole of the community. I know that there is some concern about, for example, and keeping this in mind for a moment, that we're saying that I don't believe it when the minister says he won't do it. Having spoken with Golden Hills, and at one point I realized they'd only gone up one step on the whole ladder going up to the ministerial level, and I've been talking with people in the minister's office myself. The 3 portables that they want to keep there, why do they want to keep them? They have applied, Golden Hills has, for something like 12 new portables for 2019. Does that include the ones that they've got there? If so, why? They either have them and can move them. Are they looking to put in 15, or are they looking to put in 9, including those? In any event, they'd be gone within a year, presumably. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring. They just want to have something to hold on there for a bit of time. Getting to the actual feelings of the community, there is, and through discussion after discussion, a general sense of disillusionment, a sense that nothing can be done anyway in terms of actually convincing the council or whatever, or, as we would say, the rest of the county, the local community, we aren't connected to it. We feel that we're very much out of the picture. And we have, I must say, Amber has been more than good on seeing to it that we've had our opportunities to express our things and in doing things for the community. And also in really getting our relationships going much better, along with the community hall, with the native people, with Siksika Celts, the train thing. I want to thank you for that, Amber. You've done a remarkable job. Really appreciate it. But the fact remains that as long as that downtown stays the way it is, as long as there is no place for us to actually be part to walk down the street, for the women to feel comfortable. I feel comfortable. I've got no problem. My wife's comfortable. We know these guys. What can we do? The Mounties can't do much. The Mounties aren't hired to do by law enforcement. They do everything they can. And to tell you the truth, most of these guys aren't bad people. They might be a bit scary to some. I've spent an awful lot of time with them, and I will continue to do so. But I think what we have to do is say, yeah, there is a need for something here for those people, but also something else for the community to look at to say we can really develop, we can grow, we can become something. We have all the necessary geographical and transportation type of things that we need. But we have, over the past number of years, there's been nothing actually presented. What I'm trying to do is present an opportunity here. Say, yeah, here's how we can do something. What I would suggest is that if we had that one space, our association, which we are currently doing the name search and everything on, if we had something like that, and within 2 years, we could actually then, because as you know, for the first couple of years, there is no opportunity to have things like casinos or get grants or whatever. Those are, you have to be shown that you can actually get on with it. And I, believing that we can, and also looking, if you will, at what sort of things are available in terms of grants, in terms of, well, I'll just grab this one out here, Alberta grants. These are just in the province of Alberta. Now, I'm not quite sure how the Community and Regional Economic Support Group works. That's something. You guys get the Municipal Sustainability Initiative funding, I'm sure. There's the Community Facility Enhancement Program to work on things like that. The Community Initiatives Program. The Arts Project funding. The Community Performing Arts Organization operating grants. Tourism Growth Innovation Fund. Alberta Healthy Communities Grant Program, which comes through Blue Cross. There are provincial healthy and active living initiatives. And for that matter, I don't know, Alberta Sport, is the curling club engaged in Alberta Sport? Getting some from that? There are all these, and these are simply Alberta ones that you can pick up very easily and find out about. There are, of course, other things coming from health. As you recall, Dr. Fair was hoping to establish something there, and it kind of all fell apart. But there is a substantial amount of money coming from the Alberta government aimed at native health things. And there is a concern on their part that they would like to be able to do that within a outside the reserve, and they can then have sort of the accountability issue resolved. So there are a lot of opportunities to do things if it's put together well and organized well. And there again, as I have mentioned before, there are, and I think, you know, you've got very, very good people on your staff, people who can go out and actually, you know, the maintenance people. I put a lot more faith in them than I do external experts, if you will. So I think what has to be done first, before any decision is made, is for the county to have their people go through. Tom is a contractor. No, but I'm just saying, no, but I mean, you would have the knowledge to tell people, you know, and say, yeah. Like, I mean, my own son's a contractor, but I'm not going to touch that. I don't believe that anybody who's involved in anything should be doing something that would, you know, engage his son, right? That's out of the picture. Now, but there's a fellow lives across the alley from me. He's an electrical contractor, Corey. And he'd be willing to go in and do an assessment sort of thing. We've got all the people who could do it from our perspective, and I think with you. And I think before you say or do anything about that building as a write-off, you should have a look and see whether or not, from your perspective, it can be saved. I know that the west end, or the north end, if you will, which I see as one with the gym, there'd have to be a patch on the roof of the library, pardon me, the gymnasium. But it has a standalone heating system. Most of that north side is probably quite easily fixed up at a very minimal cost. So my suggestion would be, and this is where is as we develop a community organization. You've got the arena board up there. Now, this is interesting because you do have the, well, I'll come back to that. A community-based organization that if we knew what the costs would be and what the possibilities and probabilities would be, we would be able to convince people to a much easier degree to get things going. You look at how well we did it with the community hall, community association hall, right? One thing or another has been well done. We could do it, but we have to be assured. Everybody saying, no, it's a write-off. The council's not going to go with it, the county's not going to go with it, people aren't, it's all just a write-off. Great sense of disillusionment. But we could get it back together. We did it for other things, we could do it for that. But what we want is for the county to tell us, not the school board. We don't trust the school board to any degree. And for a variety of reasons, but whatever. And then to go to these, but for 2 years, for the county to say you wanted to, even to lease the building for 2 years for $1. Giving us the opportunity to come along, find ways to get at it. After 2 years, we would then be available, or pardon me, we could as a group, and as an association, we call it the Deletion Renewal Association, we could then actually go on to the thing of applying for the grants ourselves. But we can't do it. We need that 2 years to do it. And that's the big problem with any of these sort of things in the province. And I think it's a good point. You know, you shouldn't just be able to walk in and get a grant with nothing behind you. So in the end, what I'm saying is that we would like to see, in essence, a redevelopment of Gleason in terms of where and what the central service district is. And we would like to see, and leave it to the rest of us to look after the problem downtown with the street people. They're my friends. We'll do what we can with that. I don't care what anybody says. They're broken people with problems. And I feel a personal responsibility there. And I think, by the way, something else, as long as we're getting tax dollars from the hotel and the liquor store, as long as we're getting tax dollars from them for providing the liquor, and don't get me wrong, I take a drink, you know that. But as long as we do get that tax dollar, we're part of the problem. You know, you say it's their choice to do it, it's somebody's choice to, but if we have an issue, then we have to be part of the solution. I know that some of us are trying very hard to provide a solution, at least a caring commitment and such to these people who are very broken. We aren't asking anything from any of you or from the county or anything. We'll continue with that. So all we're asking is a chance for the rest of the community to develop an area that they can be comfortable in. I know that's a pretty hard sort of thing to talk about. These aren't things that you say nowadays with political correctness. But it's truth. So in the end, I think that there are many different types of programs that we could be providing with a proper gymnasium, with everything from daycare to childcare programs. We could be working to provide a good museum or interpretive centers. What we're looking at is making sure that we could do this and make it financially viable. Now, I know that the curling rink says they can offer certain things. I don't think they can offer everything that's necessary in terms of, for instance, having a proper hall that will, with the acoustics and such, necessary. We are, as I say, also connected to the SuperNet, which is remarkably expensive to put in or whatever. But we are already connected at that school and provides with a heck of a lot of things. Mrs. Gastrach has been talking extensively about things that could be done with that. So given all that, and in particular, the one thing I really want to see left is that that shop. I helped build it. A whole bunch of us helped build it. Your granddad was there. He and I were stumbling around, dropping things on one another. It was a very cold day and our hands were freezing. But in any event, that shop, I was on the school board at the time. We provided the money, if you will, and the people built it. Now that kind of attitude, if you ever go out to Pollockville, by the way, If you want to see how things should be done, go to Pollockville, my old home country. You know where that is, I think. Halfway between Brooks and Hannah, right? Now, we can do it. It is the opportunity to say, okay, here's something. We need an initiative. We can provide it, but we need the support and, if you will, the pushing of the council. We are currently just looking at our town going to hell. Downtown, when the school left, business people told me the store profits went down remarkably. A whole bunch of money went out of that. So I think that as a community, we can demand certain things, request certain things, but we demand them. We get water, we get sewage, we get roads. There's a lot more needed to make a community viable. You put $3 million into the gym in Strathmore. $3 million. You're talking putting $2 million into the curling rink. We're talking about something that if we do it right and with the help of the Economic Development Committee and knowledgeable people about structure and so on, we could actually create something that would be self-supporting. That is in the sense of being a private-public partnership on that line. And we have to do it fairly soon. As you know, land has been sitting there unsold for years. Back when I was on council, we had a building commitment that was demanded if we sold a lot. Now, I don't know, I think that's gone out the window, but you take a look at that map and the amount of orange on it is county owned. It's not moving fast. It's very unlikely to move very fast because people, individuals aren't going to move in and put houses in or buy houses to that degree. If I were a young person looking to own a house right now, I wouldn't go there. I moved there, I put my house where I did because the school was across the road and I was hoping to have a family to go to it. Young people aren't going to like that. I don't know about, well, whatever. I'm not trying to suggest that any of us are going to, but that's gone. Then there's the issue of how people feel about their children being within that kind of community. It's not good. And you talk about bringing in industry. How? You want to bring in industry. How? What kind of industry? Where? How are you going to do it? Right now, with the kind of downturn that we have, I rather doubt that a lot of industry is looking to expand out to a place like that, particularly when you have your industrial corridor going that way. Suppose, take this as an example, my wife will kill me being on the library board that she is. You've got the library downtown, an old bank. Now, suppose you move the library up to this new complex that I'm talking about. That starts to pay into something. What do you do with that old building? A bank. Now, I've heard this mooted around. You notice how much storage there is for vehicles and such all over everywhere, and then all these kind of things. Another area where people are storing is document storage. Our old courthouse in Gleason is currently a retired university professor who is storing books and documents for other university professors and so on himself. So this, you take a bank that has a vault and has been secured as well as it has. You'll notice there's a new roll-down door. That could be turned into a document storage place. Hey, it's a bank. It was fairly safe, I would think. It's not like it's going to be held up. So, I mean, just little things like that that would be workable. I mean, heck, you could sell that building. You could sell the old library. It used to be the town hall. Before that, it was a bank. People would buy that. It'd be worthwhile. But you have to start thinking along those lines. How are you going to make the best possible use of these things? We, I think, are the only people right now offering you some way to do something that will provide some kind of money, that will make it self-operating without having to go to grants all the way. We want to try and make it a self-funding, self-supporting operation. And there might have to be some initial input that we would be willing to pay back or whatever. But think about it and go out and look at the building. Put your committee on, put your people on there and find out what they could do. We know what the people want. We didn't walk in and say, hey, here's a building. Didn't say this has been here for a long time, we're going to keep it. And we aren't offering, or we aren't asking for a whole bunch of money. We're asking you guys, the council, to put your people on it. Don't take what the school board says is a cost in that. That north end is pretty much self-supporting on itself, like physically. It's got its own heater, its own furnace and everything. Have a look before you shut down. You guys do the investigation. We've brought you some ideas, told you what some of the things that we need and what our concerns are. We don't think those will be met by redoing just the curling rink. We have to do something where we can actually expand and grow. We have to go along, as I said, perhaps a field force museum. I've talked to Rory Corey at the Military Museum in Calgary about the Alberta Field Force. General Strang came from spelled strange, but whatever. He came from over where the Thiessen feedlots are. That was his ranch. And he led the Alberta Field Force from Gleason up to fight Big Bear. There are other things that I've mentioned, that water tower, what can we do? An interpretive center, if you will, about irrigation, use of irrigation. You could actually, and I've got another one under my belt, but being a great believer in the strength of people who built roads and moved dirt, but going to the construction companies and seeing if we can't establish, you've got a grader out here, I believe, right? Something along that line that we could say Volker, Stephen, CarMax, all the rest of you. These are just ideas that I'm throwing out. It's not anything I've sort of cast in stone, but pardon me, the type of thing where we're looking at what the ordinary people of Alberta did and which would draw people to the community. So that's my solution, my idea on it, but we have to grow. If we don't, the community is going to die. Our property values are worthless. And when that goes, when our property values drop and people go to the assessment appeal, your taxes go down.
I want to thank you for coming, Mr. Holt. I do just want to clarify a couple of things.
I'm sorry,
I want to thank you for coming, Mr. Holt.
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify a couple of things. So in response to asking for our staff to do some assessments on the buildings, I know I shared with you the asset assessment report that was done in 2009.
Yeah.
And that was actually done by a consulting firm, Stantec Consulting. So we're not necessarily simply relying on, a subjective assessment by Golden Hills. Yeah, it's that report that I sent you. And in that, there's some really clear information that we're looking at a building that was like the original part that was built in 1955, part of it that was built in 1963. And there are some estimates. Now, mind you, these estimates are from 2009. So certainly some of them won't be accurate anymore. But even for that roofing, we're looking at $310,000.
I would dispute that. I would, but that's where I would, so I've asked other people around, and for that, I think that is, that's a high ball. But that's where I've just asked if.
Yeah, no, I'm just letting you know that and all of council did visit the school. We walked through it as part of our process through this decision-making process.
Yeah, and I think that they have, like, since that was done, there have been other improvements that have been done in there. Like these are, you were kind of, one was done at that year, then a few things were fixed up and then weren't fixed and so on. So really the numbers are quite undone. So again, I would suggest that certainly talking to a contractor down there who thought that, not my son, another contractor who thought it was really highballed, the cost of that was presented, particularly to concerning the new part. So I would really like to hear something from our own people. Okay. Now, given that, I feel that there's not a heck of a lot more than I can say, except I'd like to just pass this around. What to do about only older men? Put them to work. I'll let you pass this around. It's about the man shed movement. About providing a facility for people. I tell the guys they can go do some work, have some machinery in it, that sort of thing, and actually make ongoing contributions to the community, whether they're repairing tables for somebody or electrical or whatever, that kind of stuff. I think it's a great idea, and that'd be an excellent use of that whole shop there. But because I know that when I retired from teaching, come September, I began to feel one of the worst feelings you have is you're feeling useless. You feel, what do I do now? There go the school buses. I'm home here. What? You begin to feel that you don't have value. It's really important to make everybody in the community feel they have value. And by the way, that's what I say to I have said to people when I was in special needs, that every life has value. And it's our job as a community to enhance that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other representatives that would like to speak from the community?
Yes, if there's anybody else who wants to talk.
If you want to just come to the microphone and just introduce yourself. If you can just introduce yourself, Robert. If you can just introduce yourself.
My name is Robert Barstad. I'm a long-term resident of Gleason. And my concern for the community is not reliant on my property values. Let me make that clear. They'll carry me out in a box. So I'm not interested in selling anything really. My concern is that what we have here is a very critical little community that borders an increasingly important Indigenous community. And I'm sure you're all aware that these communities are growing in influence daily, almost, because they're featured on the news daily. Therefore, Gleason, anything that we can do to enhance the continuation of the community, to attract business, to attract young families, is to the benefit of Gleason and to the benefit of the county of Wheatland. There is precedent for repurposing of schools, and I understand that the purpose of our being here today is to talk about the future of the old Gleason School. Clooney is one example of such a repurposing. East Cooley is another one, where they have turned the old school into a museum, where they have fundraisers, which I've attended. And they seem to be fairly successful in their fundraising efforts. So all I can say, because I really didn't know about this this gathering until yesterday, and am not prepared with figures. All I can say is that in general purpose, I support the comments made by Mr. Holt. I'm strongly in support of anything that will enhance the future development of Gleason. I am concerned about the situation downtown, but I'm not overly alarmed about it because I understand that we're not living in a perfect world, and that generally speaking, over time, issues are resolved. What I can say in principle, and this is where Mr. Holt and I will diverge in our opinion, is that I am much more in favor of private individuals and businesses taking the lead in bringing business to a community. I just plain don't believe, I'm not even particularly in favor of grants. I'm old-fashioned that way. But I can remember the days when any fundraising that had to be done was done by private individuals, plain and simply. That was it. And I would prefer that we go back to that a lot more. So I really think that there's a need for or there is a purpose for the Gleason School. I think it can be found. I have some ideas, but I would like to see more private interest in the continuance of that facility. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Barstad.
Well, thank you, people. Robert and I we've been disagreeing about this for years and will continue. Only thing I can say that I have changed remarkably. Support Maxime Bernier, believe it or not. Anyway, what I would also like you to do
Sid?
is I'd like you to come. Oh, Robert, when is our next jam session?
The fourth Tuesday, I think.
Fourth Tuesday. Robert has organized, and this is something.
Sid, I'm just going to have you use the
We're all
microphone.
invited. It's great music, good time. Come on down, listen to Robert play, and listen to the rest of them play.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in.
Okay?
Sir, did you wish to speak or no? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Questions, discussion?
I'm going to stick around and wait for the results.
Okay, then.
Do you, Sid, would you entertain a question if somebody has one?
Oh, yeah, do you have questions? I guess we should. I figured it was kind of a done deal anyway, but do you have any questions?
Just clarification, Sid. So you said 2 years you guys would be looking at grants if
I'm sorry,
hypothetically.
you're going to have to speak up there, buddy.
Just hypothetically, if you guys were to get the building, if we were to not demolish it, you'd be looking at 2 years for grants?
Well, 2 years, I think, for an association to take over, because as I say, you have to be functioning for 2 years before you can apply for any of these types of grants.
So that being said, who's going to be willing to cover the costs
Well, that's where I
prior
think
to?
Prior to that, they would work very hard to, get a couple businesses in. And for instance, if they were paying $500 a month, and I have talked to somebody who would be interested in starting a cafe that way. And that price, in fact, she came up with that figure.
But in order
So
to,
anyway, after that, so if you get 2 of those in, that gives you $1,000 a month, right?
excuse me,
If-
Sid, but in order to get your businesses in, you have to be up to code prior to getting your businesses in. We have to, as the county, we have to make sure the building is up to code prior to letting the businesses in.
Well, yeah.
So how are you going to bring that up to code with the cost it
Well,
is?
that's what I say. The fact is that building at North End, it had kids in it. It had children in it. Now, surely, Golden Hills wasn't putting children into a school that was dangerous.
But Sid, you'll
But
appreciate when the, sorry. just-
Correct me if I'm wrong, once you change use, you have to bring it up to provincial code.
I don't know, you'd have to. And that's
That's true, simple as that. So how are you willing to
Okay,
bring
for
up
one- Okay,
money?
all right. I, for one, as a member of the community, then started the GoFundMe thing, would contribute personally, say $50 a month towards something like that. You get 100 people together, you got 5,000. You get 50 together, you got 2,500. Right? This is the sort of thing that if we then are, like I say, are established charitable nonprofit organization, then we can do that. You can use all kinds, there are a lot of ways to do it, but that's what I'm suggesting is that, yeah, you want to get it up to code. We've got a lot of people. We have an electrical contractor who is willing to work on it. We've got a lot of people who have skills as carpentry, other types of skills along that line, who are willing to put time into it. You know full well that the arena has for years operated on that particular idea, that local people actually do a heck of a lot of the work. And that has always been one of the characteristics of a small community, is that you get those people out and working on it. As you noticed, when we had our thing just for the train going through, the amount of work that people put in, that they were willing to put in. And if you can get somebody from economic development who's a driving force to say, hey, can we get out there and fix that and do that? Just like we did when we built that shop in the first place. You know, I think that we can have enough people to do the actual work and actually contribute to some of the costs. And that would be part of it, but we have to know how much and so on that it would be. But don't sell the people short. Don't assume that everything has to come from the government or that everything has to come from associations, one thing or another. What we can talk about is how do we, as a community, and this is really important, how do we get by the idea that somehow or other everything is controlling us? We have to take responsibility and grab the bull by the horns and say, yes, we can do things and we will do them. But given, you know, we need to know the amounts. We need to know that there's somebody behind us saying, hey, we support your idea, you do it. And then, if we don't, then it's on us. But in the meantime, you know, find out, let us know what it's going to cost us. Don't go by that. Find out the actual cost that it would take to get that going. Tell us, and we can do it. His brother's up in his 80s. He taught my boy how to do his plumbing. He sits there, and Gerald's got a license. He'll say, okay, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what you do. He shouldn't do plumbing, that sort of thing.
Thanks,
We've got
Mr.
all that
Holt.
stuff.
Thank
We
you.
aren't helpless.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Okay? Anybody else?
I would just like to reiterate, yes, Gleason is the community, but there are also surrounding residents that consider Gleason part their community. And from, I don't know which range road it would be, probably 234, Township 234 south, right to Clooney, I would say halfway to Nameka would all consider Gleason their home.
Yeah.
And I would be very surprised, did you, when doing your consulting community members, did you talk to those rural
Yeah, I
areas?
did. I talked to some.
And
The fact remains, you know, that whenever I bring it up with, and I hate to say this, but there has always been a rural-urban divide. Always been one. How many townspeople are on the arena board?
not sure. I think there's
There has
two.
been a divide there between the rural community and the hamlet for many years. And I think it's something that we started getting over, because for a lot of the people in the community, they just, but in talking to them, they say, well, there's no use because sense of entitlement in the rural community. Now, I know full well that a lot of the rural community can end up do some very significant things in town. So a lot of that's gone out the window. You look at how things have fallen apart. We lost the fall fair simply because people were overworked.
Let's just try and stay focused on the question. So you did consult some of the rural residents.
Pardon me?
You did consult some of the rural residents. Any other questions?
Just call the question.
Thank you for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
I'll accept that as information.
There's a motion on the floor.
Out we go there, my friends.
Any discussion? Well, I guess we can accept it as information. All in favor? Motion carried. Discussion? I know there's a notice of motion that was given at our last meeting that was circulated.
I wasn't at the December 4th, but I can imagine what was going on at the meeting. And Sid brings a lot of interesting points to the table, but the fact is, somebody has to do it. And I don't think there's willing to talk about it, but I don't know if there's a willingness to do it. That's my issue down in that area.
Glenn?
Rocky Ford, I think in about 1982, part of another group, we had a school that was smaller than this one, much newer than this one, kept in very good shape. The village took it over and we turned it into what it is today. looking back on it and the amount of fundraising and the kitchen and getting the money in there, it's up the code for a school. That does not mean you can have a kitchen in it. Fans and the ventilation, the gym, the roof, everything. I'm sure we could have built a new building like Standard did. They just went and built a new building. I'm still of that opinion to repurpose that building. I'm thinking in the long run, it'd be much easier to build the appropriate size, because once we tear half of it down, we're into it for a lot already. To repurpose it, I don't, yeah.
Jason?
I think we've got a pretty good deal right now as it stands with Golden Hills and the provincial government willing to take full cost of demolition if we take the whole thing down. I understand there's certain wants rather than needs in a community, but I think it's our job to decide what's different between a need and a want, and what's reality and what's fantasy. And all due respect to Mr. Holt, I don't think he fully thought of his plan, as he didn't know the process of getting businesses in, getting certain building up to code. I just flat out can't support something that isn't thought through.
Just as information on what Sid was saying, that some of that building is fully functional. That is functional, but I was sitting on the school board when they did maintenance on and did work on that school. It did never go through a modernization. All it ever got was BQRP, which Building Quality Restoration Program, which means if something broke, you fixed it. And you kept it fixed. So that building is still the same structure that was there back in 52 or 48 or whatever it was. They never did go through a modernization program like some of the other ones, and the same Standard was in the same boat. It never went through that either. So you're still looking at an old building, and Glenn's right. If you want to build a coffee shop, build a coffee shop. You can add on another room or two on there if you want a hair salon or something else along. You can do that a lot cheaper than you can trying to bring that thing up to code and make it work.
Tom?
I agree with the sentiment. I also agree with what Sid said, that what happens to Gleason if we don't do something. So I've been thinking about this. If we tear out the county, the school board tears the school down, we've got a huge parcel of land there from what we've got there. And it is a tremendous building base to what could happen there. It could be so what I'm just throwing around, if the county, and I hate to do this, but if the county were to build a 50 by 100-foot strip mall that girder construction, I don't recommend this for every place, but like basically we build a strip mall, the county builds a strip mall, and then we become landlords. It becomes the tenant base. It becomes the tenant base for every. We have the land. It's developed. Everything is there. The SuperNet and everything still stays there. I think it can be done. I honestly think it could be done for $1 million. You've got a building, and then it's modernized. It's up to, and then anything can be done in that building. I agree with Sid. You're not going to be able to restore Main Street. I mean, and every town has to have a center. So I don't know. I know it's crazy, but
All due respect, I think we have, that's a little off topic. That would be a different conversation.
No, but we're getting rid of the building. It follows into that. We get rid of the school and we start.
Well, we have to make that decision first before we can continue on.
Well,
that
I know, but I'm
conversation.
not willing to make that decision unless there's consensus. No, there has to be. We have to have a plan going forward. We have to have agreement within amongst ourselves whether or not what we're going to do with Gleason. And this has been pushed down the road forever, and no one wants to. But
If there's a need for those certain businesses, private business would already be doing it.
no, Gleason is, we can't, we inherited this place. We have to do, everybody, we've just washed our hands of it. And this is gonna happen to all the hamlets and maybe some of the villages that are gonna be acquired 10 or 15 years down the road, being what, and this has to be addressed. We have to figure out a way how we're gonna treat our hamlets. Our hamlets have to be treated differently than they have been treated. They cannot be, we cannot treat them the same way that we're treating the other municipalities. They're not the same as Rockyford. They're not the same as Standard. They're not the same as Azar. We own these, and as such, we have a obligation to these things. And I don't know what that is, but I know it has to be different than what it has been. You know, so I'm thinking that if there's a general agreement that if we tear the school down, that we will look at something to revitalize Gleason. But we're gonna have to put money into the place. No one else is gonna do it, and it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse.
I think as a council, we've had those meetings, those strategic planning, saying we do have to do something with Gleason. We do have to look at changing the way we work with those hamlets. But that being said, I still think this is a decision that comes first. Like I said, we've already talked about doing it. Do we need a plan before we can make this decision? I don't think so. I think we've sat around the table long enough knowing that we will work with Gleason and change the way we do things and put money into it. We already are putting more money into the hamlets than previous councils have in the past. But that still being said, there are other ways of helping the businesses in those small towns or getting businesses going rather than building the building for them, leasing the space for $1. There's other ways of doing it, whether that's allowing them to be on the land for however many years without a subsidized utility rate or stuff like that. I mean, I don't think it's the government's job to be to be a landlord, to be a developer. That isn't our job. Our job is to make the environment very easy for development to grow.
Donna has a comment.
I agree with Jason, and I don't think that all the things that we could do for Gleason wouldn't involve that place. We can help that downtown. We can light it up. There's things that you can do without putting money and building something that what I think is missing in Gleason is that community feeling, is that community building. But I think, and I think Gleason is all the hamlets are dying. They're all the same. And where do you start and where do you finish? And I think economic development can actually go in there and actually, me personally, I think we went through the strategic thing. There is good things about it. We can turn it around. But I don't think putting a building up and I don't think that's going to help the community spirit. And it is a spirit, and it is getting them to work together. Somehow that has to happen. And I don't think it has anything, whether that building stays there isn't going to do it. I think we need to move beyond that, like go into there and there's just so many things you can do with a community of getting them to think of it themselves, get them together, get them thinking with some help through economic development.
Through the chair, there's another issue down there too, and Sid spoke to it a bit, and we keep trying to go away from it. It's the issue with the natives and what's happening down on Main Street. If you take away everything that's on Main Street and move it a half a mile further north, they're going to move a half a mile further north. And within 2 years of doing something on the north end, you're going to have the same problem there. So you got two problems. You got to look after what's down there, and you got to get the people on the other side of the tracks to come on site and work with you to make that a community that works, because it's their community too. They use it in a different way than we use it, but it's still part of their community. And until you get them on side and willing to work with you, you can do all you want to do. As a businessman, I would never go down there and put a business in place right now. I'd have to have some pretty strong guarantees that there's going to be something there when I go there. And the last thing I do is put it in a school. I would look at a building, a lot, the service lot, and then I could look at putting the structure that I need on there for the business that I'm going to operate. But there's another issue down there, and until that other side of the track comes on side and gets working with whoever's working, whether it's the community or with us, it's going to be a long time before that place changes.
Just have a question. I don't know the answer. Can you make the community dry? Can you remove the liquor licenses that are there? I don't know if it's, I know there is some communities that are adjacent to reserves, I believe, that are not allowed to have. I don't know.
When we tried to do that, we had meetings here, we put motions on the floor, we did everything, and we had come in. You cannot, if you put a bylaw in place that makes that dry, every community in this municipality has to be dry.
And with the current liquor license, in response to some community concerns, I've been in contact with Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis, AGLC, and they are aware of issues and they're monitoring that, and they are enforcing issues that like could shut down a certain liquor license if there are infractions on their license. But from my understanding from speaking to the enforcement officer, once that license is in place, like unless there are infractions, it stays in place. That's my understanding, that it's not a municipal jurisdiction, it's provincially licensed. And there is a current license in place, and that will continue unless there's some infractions that they have to take enforcement measures.
That community was a fairly decent-sized community at one time. My uncle ran a business out of there, a dealership out of there. And it had its struggles like everyone else, but it really started going backwards back in the mid to late 60s when they gave the natives the right to openly drink alcohol off the reserve. And that's when it started going downhill, and it's never been able to catch itself since then. And I'm not saying anything against the natives. I'm just saying it's the issue that they have with alcohol is totally different than not why it affects them that way, but it does.
Glenn?
All our communities in the county in the 60s were a different look than they are today. I mean, the only one that's growing is Strathmore. But I know Rocky Ford, you could buy clothes there, and it had drugstores there. It had a couple restaurants. It had 3 car dealerships. It's the same footprint. Rosebud was way different than it looks today. Rosebud is today because of the purpose that it was built for. They took it in the 70s and built it into what it is today. It's the same footprint. There was elevators there, pool halls, curling rinks. All of them were different. It's just not a native province, and it's not a drinking problem. It's a transportation issue. It's what people want to do. They're moving around. Yeah, I'm to help out the community with that land is downtown. It's in a great spot. I view that as county land, but more specifically, that land belongs to that community. That should be for that community to decide if it's a great big park or if they want to have a strip mall there. This isn't the end. If they want to come in and have a strip mall and they can find some financing, let the private people come in. We can help them out with the land, and I'm sure a deal can be, I'm more open to doing that than keeping that school or tearing half of it down. I'm thinking the future, I'm still willing to talk, but as far as that old building, I'm scared of it.
Jason, did you have a comment? So, because the school's in Division 2, I'll just give some thoughts that I have gathered from different people within the community and just from research I've done myself. So I did a lot of research into like lifespan of buildings and functional age of buildings and that type of thing. And a lot of the research that I showed, or that I found, showed that reuse of buildings can actually extend the functional age of a building. So if you're looking at and there was a lot of research actually specific to schools because of situations specific like this, where you have a school board that's determined due to a number of factors to relocate students to another community or more centralized regional school. And a lot of it was American, but I think it mostly translates to Canada. I did try and research some of the northern US to southern US kind of differentiation and that kind of thing. But it really did talk about even that when you have a school that's past the functional age for students, that through reuse, it can extend that age. And I think we have had a lot of ideas presented that could potentially be feasible. The challenge that I ran into in my research is that you always have to balance, whether it's environmental, financial, or those types of factors, how expensive it is, whether you're talking environmentally expensive or fiscally expensive or that kind of thing, to repurpose a school or any type of building versus is it at its lifespan, like where it makes more sense to do like what Tom is talking about. If you want a coffee shop, where it actually makes more sense for somebody to look at building a new building. And in terms of from a environmental perspective, often it makes a lot more sense to build a new structure just because of your, like the leakage, if you will, of energy and things like that in these older buildings, and they're not always efficient like a new building would be. That being said, if you look at Central Bow Valley School, even though the original part was built in 1951, it's got a $9.2 million estimated replacement cost on that building. And so I was trying to sort through, like, what is the value of that building? And I don't know how you arrive at that, because I recognize that there's substantial cost, particularly if you're looking at bringing it up to code for a change of use. There's a substantial cost for that. I know we can say like that Stantec didn't do this assessment for us, but I certainly feel comfortable utilizing this 80-page report from Stantec and basing some of our decisions on these numbers. I know everybody had this circulated previously when we made this decision. There are numbers in there, like that roof is estimated. In 2009, it was estimated to be $310,000, and that was after some patching in 2008. So it's a hard decision because the reality of this building is that the main part of it was built in 1951, and then the other section is built in 1963, and it's a big question, what is the lifespan of that building given the maintenance that has been done and that kind of thing? And that's what I'm struggling with, and what is best for the community. I'm not looking at it so much from a business perspective. I'm looking at it more from things that the community could utilize, like the gymnasium, because I think with the exception of the swimming pool that's currently on the floor of the gymnasium floor, it is a very useful space and could be a really good amenity for our ratepayers in Gleason. And then even just office space that we have heard some needs expressed for from more a social service aspect, which I think you could look at more in the purview of like a government role versus like a private business role or that kind of thing. These are just, I have no answer, just these are some of the factors I've been weighing and my thoughts. And
if I may, I fully agree with Amber that the school's in her division, and but I've called Gleason home for my whole life. I mean, my neighbors, I think I'll go back to what I told Sid, the community isn't just Gleason. The community is the surrounding residents for spanning 10 miles, I'd say, all one way. And as much as I understand Gleason sentiments, I've talked to people in my division and Amber's, the surrounding community residents, you could say, and they don't understand why we would be spending money on something like that. And I don't know how Tom, Scott, or Ben could justify to their residents why we're spending money on this when we have our population growing in the west, when we have most of our tax base in the west, but yet we're dumping millions into a school when we could have the problem gone without any cost and have open land that is much more appealing for developers, in my mind, than 1953 or 1951 building. So I'll say again, I don't know why it's taken so long, because I think we are now we're slowing up the progress. I think Golden Hills could have had an answer in November. I think we, as government usually does, is slowing down this process. So that's it. That's all I will say, but I just am.
I think it
Very
was
adamant.
fair to give the community the opportunity to have some time to put together a plan. We made that commitment. My understanding was that a viable business plan was going to be presented today with like a financial plan to fund it. And I'm not sure that I heard of feasible,
No, but all due
operationally
respect,
sustainable.
what did, I don't know, maybe we were sitting at different town halls, but I didn't get the sense that they wanted to keep the school. They wanted to keep it out of the hands of other people. They understood that it wasn't financially stable to keep around. So what I got out of that meeting is not the path we took. We took the path that the majority was against. The majority of the people that showed up at that meeting just didn't want it. They wanted the land. They said that straight out. They wanted the land. We have given them, the community, more than ample time. We actually went with the vocal minority yet again from the town hall. The town hall just
well,
wanted
at
the
that
land.
point in time, we didn't have the option, or my recollection was we did not have the option where we could take ownership of the land and have Alberta Infrastructure.
But then it was shown to us. So why wouldn't we
Right.
go with the majority of the people at the town hall?
So through the chair, you're right, Amber, there was no business plan presented today. And I don't think we've hindered the process, because Hazari right now, they've just put the tender out for the demolition. So they've got a crew in the area doing it. So I think if that's what the decision is, and you get it in place fast enough, then they can use that same company to do the two of them while they're out here. Whether that's possible or not, I don't know, but it makes sense. While they've got them out doing one, they can do the two of them at the same time. So I don't think we've lost that time. So I think
And I think if the community spirit is there to raise funds and to form a foundation, Gleason Renewal, in my mind, doesn't necessarily hinge on keeping a 1951 building. I honestly think, and I will work with the community group, that we can do some Gleason Renewal. And if we have that community spirit to do some of that fundraising, get some of those grants, maybe we look at a new updated, and I'm not saying even a municipally built, but if we can generate the funds through different programs and through personal support and that kind of thing, we could still look, like, I don't think that eliminates the possibility of bringing in something like a museum to Gleason or some continuing ed or things like that. And obviously the business opportunities are always there. So it's just, the people I've spoken to in Gleason understand that we have to be responsible to the entire municipality, and I have said that through this entire process, is that we have to do what's right for the entire municipality.
I'll say I expected to see a business plan today, and I saw lots of ideas.
Yeah.
And the funding that he talked about, grants, everything about that, I believe, none of that covers operations. Grants are for developing new spaces and things, but my understanding of most grants, there's nothing available for operations. That's the key to this building, is have operating costs, because the moment we take it over, we have to pay for it. I think there was he said 8,000 a year. That's nowhere near what we've been told it would cost to keep that thing just going. So I didn't see anything that had give me an idea that they have a good plan in place, which is unfortunate. I think they've had a lot of time. I think it's been, 5 years now since the school has been shut down? moved in there, 3 years?
Not that long.
But, and there was notice of that long beforehand, so, I don't feel bad in the decision to say it's time to do what, we have to do. I think they've had lots of notice, lots of ideas, but there's never been pen to paper with a plan. And that's what it takes to get stuff done. We could build a building, and I don't think we should be able to be landlords in that situation. I've been in other municipalities where we've tried to rent privately. It never is very successful. You usually end up with tenants that are, don't have a viable business plan. They have an idea, and they work on emotions. And it doesn't always work well. So that's just my personal experience.
Any further discussion?
Just,
It was circulated. Approval that Wheatland County direct the Golden Hills School Division number 75 to proceed with full demolition of the Central Bow Valley School, and further that the Golden Hills School Division number 75 proceed with the transfer of land to Wheatland County.
And I think the preamble to the motion going through is that we had a presentation today and there was no clear business plan put in place for council to look at. And that's why we're going ahead with the demolition.
And I'll just reiterate too that I think any future projects, I mean, if we're talking about having the capacity to fundraise or find grants for, $300,000 to fix the roof or something like that, that can go a long ways in terms of renewal, whether it's like a new updated building for things like social services or further education, museums, things like that. So I think I want the community to understand that that's not necessarily, those opportunities aren't being eliminated. It's just, we have to recognize that we are looking at a building that was built in 1951, and buildings do have lifespans, and we can, and I know I have heard around this table multiple times that it's not responsible for the municipality to take on that liability of a building of that age with 80 pages of identified issues. And I mean, it says right here, the structural condition of the school is marginal, and it identifies exactly in 2009. And there was like tree stumps in the foundation, cracks in the concrete blocks, cracked foundations, things like, there are some major and structural issues within that building that we can't ignore.
If you're going to get private buy-in to that, like what the doctor was talking about here a while ago, you remove what's there and then look at something that's new, that's up to code, that they can set up. You'll get more buy-in from the public on that type of a system than you will doing something to this one.
Well, and we have to recognize that we're also maintaining that 10 acres for the community with the recreation opportunities that are on that land as well.
Can we just confirm that Glenn has made a motion? Is that correct?
Is there any other questions or further discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. I think that adjourns our meeting if we can have a motion for adjournment. All in favor?